All right. If I slip up and say that it's Monday, please pardon me in advance. It is Tuesday now, the 30th. Memorial Day weekend is finally, I think, coming to a close here. We've got the parade that we're going to be covering a little bit later on, right, Raylene?
Yes.
Just around 10:30 or so, right here in the Granite City. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Jeremy Reed is sitting right next to us here, construction engineer with VTrans. We're going to be talking about construction projects going on in and around not only central Vermont, but statewide. And there is much to talk about here and much to get ready for with the summer construction season, which really is just getting started. But first off, welcome to both of you. Raylene, how was the weekend?
It was great.
You got out. You got out on a friend's motorcycle. You went up on a hot air balloon. My God, is there anything?
I know it couldn't have been any better. I have to say the hot air balloon was pretty absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And yeah,
What an
that could
experience.
be addicting.
You know,
sure.
And I haven't had a chance to tell you or Aaron Johnson, who took us up out of the Post Mills Airport. What an experience that was. I want to propose to him doing a bungee jump out of the balloon.
Oh my gosh!
Why not?
You took the people over in the bucket.
But why not, though? Really? I mean,
Well, he's jumped out of
yeah,
one
he
before.
skydived.
Yeah.
I think it was like what? It was like 8,000 feet or something like
Yeah.
that. I'm not down with the skydiving, but I'll do a bungee. So I think we should talk about
So you
this.
could take the people in the balloon with you.
Why not?
You're like kind of a weight there. I'm not sure that
Jeremy, do you want in on
that all
this?
works.
I've bungee jumped before, so
You have bungee?
I have, yeah. New Zealand.
Would you really?
Yeah,
Yeah, that one's.
that's the homeland of bungee jumping.
Yeah, that's no joke.
Are
right
you
there.
serious? Is it really?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
I have a friend that did it as well, and when I just watching the video makes me cringe.
Yeah, they've got a bunch of different ones. You know,
Really?
bridges, and then I did like a gondola thing out over a canyon, and
Oh my
then they do
God.
have some horizontal things where they fling you out.
What?
And, it's
Yeah.
adrenaline junkie heaven. Is
Really? I'm going to have to YouTube that a little bit.
Yeah, just do Queenstown bungee jumping. You'll see all kinds of stuff.
Wow. Anyway, it was a great weekend, and I hope it was for you as well. No matter who you are, where you are, listening or watching this morning, maybe you got the grill going. Maybe you got some family time. We went out in the kayak, and Lily actually went swimming, which I'm not really.
I heard the water was like 53, 52,
Yeah.
53.
Not
Yeah.
really sure how.
Kids are crazy.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't last that long, but still, she went swimming, and
Yeah.
it's just. But it was nice to get out the kayak with the loons. I mean, it was just wonderful. I mean, it was just the weather was perfect, it was stellar. What are we? 80s here for the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we're going to jump into the 60s. I hear front side of the weekend, back side of the weekend, something like that. We have some cooler weather coming.
Yeah.
But
A little bit of rain.
Yes.
Thursday, I think.
that's it right there. That's the cool front that's going to be pushing in. Jeremy, your I want to start out this morning on a serious note, saying your time is so valuable to us. For you to come in here from VTrans, we can only guess how busy you are. Your time to come in here and speak with us on the microphones is just invaluable to us.
It's my pleasure, JD, and it just helps us get the word out as well and keep all the traveling public informed of what's happening, what they
Yes.
should expect. So we appreciate the opportunity.
There's never going to be a summer where VTrans takes the summer off and we can all just drive through the state of Vermont without any kind of construction delays. Not going to happen.
Not going to happen. I mean, at the end of the day, the road network is like anything else. It needs maintenance. It needs repairs.
Sure.
So
And if it did ever happen, then the repercussion would be
Oh,
listening to
yes.
assholes like JD constantly complain that there's this hole and that bump and this
Exactly.
bump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate. It's necessary, and we try to minimize the impact. But
Yeah.
it is a necessary evil. So
This April, which last month technically, I said to Raylene that there were 10 culverts on Route 302, and then a week later it was 50 culverts, and then we
I
got
think we get up to 1,000.
it was well, yeah. I mean, it was
She's a drama queen.
we got. I think we were up around 800 culverts somewhere in there on 302, and everyone and their brother was like, "When the hell is this going to end?" How many culverts were there?
So I don't know how many. So, I think that was our maintenance forces out there in advance of a project. So, again, trying to be somewhat strategic,
Yeah.
replace the culverts before we put down pavement and things like that. So, I don't have a lot of details on that specific project, but, that's part of our program strategic thinking to replace the assets in a manner that doesn't undermine what we do next.
Yeah, and those seeing those culverts, the old ones when they pulled them out, no surprise that they needed to be repaired. I mean, they were just rusted and just junk.
Yeah, I mean, the things have a finite life, and at the end of the day, despite our best efforts with galvanization and things like that, it's a harsh environment in Vermont, as we all
Sure.
can experience.
Now, does the salt on the side of the roads, does that get into the culvert and eat them up?
Probably a little bit. I think more of it's just the debris. You've got stones, sticks. They scratch that coating, and at the end of the day, they never dry out. So
Sure.
it's just one of those deals where 40, 50 years, and you're about the end of the life.
Yeah. Wow. What is this summer? The snapshot is it looking like it's going to be on par with last summer in terms
Sure.
of how much is going on, or a little bit lighter? Or
No, it'll be about the same. So last summer we did a little over $280 million worth of work, and we'll do something similar this year. We've got less what I'll call mega projects, those really big projects like the Middlebury Tunnel, the Grand Isle North Hero Drawbridge. We're doing less of those, but we're still from a financial piece right on par. So we're doing maybe a little bit more projects. Unfortunately, inflation and the cost of labor's driving our prices up as well. So it's not a direct correlation with the spending to what it was maybe 5 years ago.
Sure.
Right? So we're not quite getting the same number of projects for our money, but we're spending significantly more than we were 5 years ago.
okay, Raylene, jump in with anything that you have.
I will.
I just have to tell you, South End Cumbies, right over here. You know where South End
Sure,
Cumbies is?
yeah.
Right. From South End Cumbies, going up that little hill towards, the car wash up at the top there. You know where I'm talking
Yep.
about. What do we have to do to get there? What do we have to do to get there? Can I throw you a couple $100?
If wishing made it so,
He was going to
JB.
bring cash.
Right,
He
yeah.
really
Yeah, I was
was.
gonna have a couple-
I told him,
couple
don't worry
Benjamins
about
with
it.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean it's a challenge, right? I mean,
Wow!
it's
it's a challenge to drive through that, pal.
right.
Have you been through there lately? Has Jeremy Reed driven that?
I've been through there. I stopped by at the Aubuchon's maybe 2 weeks ago. So
All right.
yeah,
Yeah. That's a rough
Yeah.
patch right there.
Yep.
Like bad.
yeah. No, I hear you.
Is that anything that's I'm just
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure where that's programmed. So here's sort of the way it works. We've got an asset management group that they look at all the bridges, all the roads, the paving condition, and they try to put the right treatment in at the right time.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily mean worst first all the time, because that robs your preventative maintenance. So,
Sure.
right, if you wait till your clapboards are rotten, you never do the paint. Right. So
Exactly.
that's sort of where we're at. And so they look at it, look at the dollars we have available, and try to come out with a 2 to 5 year plan that satisfies all the town's needs, all of our interstates, state highway system.
Sure.
And, it goes into the hopper, and we start programming projects. And then, if something deteriorates really quickly, we
Yeah.
can kind of advance that and move some projects around. But it is a very fluid system, and it is very much statewide. So
Yeah.
so there is.
I know. It's like we all travel this road
Right.
all the time,
Right.
here. So of course we're sensitive to it, but we forget that you guys are responsible for the entire state,
Exactly.
which is overwhelming, and you're also responsible for all the things that we as motorists can't see. Like what's going on underneath that bridge, or what's
for
going
sure.
on with this culvert, or whatever it may be. You guys have to have eyes on everything, not just the road in front of you while you're driving.
Exactly, right? So, a normal bridge we inspect every 2 years to make sure that, that it's structurally sound, and any preventative maintenance needs are identified, cleaning out joints, washing bearings, things like that, just getting that salt and crud off it. So that's all part of it. And then we take a, pavement condition. We do a survey every year for that on the state routes, interstates. And, then we get some input from the regional planning commissions, towns, those sort of bodies. And again, it's very much a fluid system where we get input from any number of sources and try to come up with a well thought out and strategic program.
Are some of those projects joint projects where you do work with the city and say the piece up on the south end of Main Street? Would the city be involved in fixing that as well, or is that strictly state because it's
So there's a couple different layers to that, right? So if it's part of our design bid build program, there's going to be a local funding portion most of the time. And then, if it's a straight town highway, we could offer grants. We could, help the city with some technical advice. So there's no one approach. It's anything like we were talking the culverts on 302. Those were probably done in our what we call IDIQ program, which are very smaller projects that are in advance of a bigger project.
Yeah.
We offer town highway grants. So the needs can be met in any number of ways, all the way up to full federal participation.
Yeah, right.
So we've got some earmarked funds for that, and so it is a all of the above approach.
And someone's got to be behind the desk with the countless piles of paperwork, deciphering everything and figuring out what money is going to be spent where and when.
Exactly, and that's the asset management approach to look at that network as a whole and say, okay,
what a job.
If we put $10 million here, what does that do for us over the life cycle?
Sure.
Right, and looking at all the competing interests. So, I sort of we'll say it, throw it all in the hopper, but it is somewhat strategic, or not somewhat. It's very strategic in the approach that they take.
Raylene posts up the road construction report at the start of every single week, and thank you, Raylene, for doing that. Is this the website where you said V Transparency?
Yeah, so V Transparency. If you just Google V Transparency, you can pop up a map with all of our planned and active construction projects. Okay. And there's typically a fact sheet associated with that, so you can see if it's planned, when it's actually scheduled for construction, what the scope of the project will be, any number of things, who to contact if you have any questions. And that's where, you'll see, okay, are we going to come in and just do, a quick surface rehab with some preventive maintenance, filling potholes, or is it going to be like a full depth reconstruction where we're going all the way down to gravel and then building it back up?
I remember in the past when you've been on that you basically said to me in layman's terms, we need to stay like a full year ahead at least of where we are. We're already
for sure
having a look. We already are planning out. This summer's planned out. We're planning out next summer,
and then some, right? So,
and then some.
Ballpark. You're looking at 2 to 3 years out, and some of the bigger projects, if we have to go through and get some right away, right? We've got to work with those property owners, whether it be a temporary or permanent easement. Environmental permits, can take some time, and so our design cycle. A simple paving project may be able to get done in a year, but a bridge project is 2 to 3, 4, 5 years potentially.
And any of those permits and plans, I'm assuming, can change an
Sure.
idea at the drop of a hat.
Sure.
If
Yeah.
you run into an environmental issue, that project could be stalled for
For
ever,
sure.
maybe. If,
Well, I mean, depending on what it is, but a great example of that would be the Grand Isle North Hero Bridge, right? So we hit some PCBs mid-construction. Actually, we were just starting construction, and we had to pivot, right? We still built the project we wanted to build, but we had to, take the time to dispose of this contaminated soil in an adequate way, and it definitely altered, the construction sequence to the tune of about a year. So.
Okay.
There are definitely unknowns that we
Sure,
don't know
has
until
to
we
be.
get out there. And then there are things like in design where we okay, we found an archaeological sensitive area, right? There might be some artifacts there that we need to catalog or preserve or whatever the case may be that wasn't originally anticipated. So all of those things can dictate the schedule.
Speaking of bridges, tell me about the bridge over by Price Chopper in Berlin.
Yep. So that's going to be a full reconstruction, scheduled for this summer. Obviously, traffic, the rail line, pretty congested site. But certainly, we're working through that and making decent progress.
I thought it was going pretty quick.
Yeah. And there's been some nice aerial shots of it where it's like, wow, that's a big job.
And we've been fairly fortunate. I mean, we had first week of May, I think it rained every day, but since then we've had some pretty good weather, so we've been able to really make some good progress.
I have a friend that I mentioned that you were going to be on the air, and they want to get in on some cash bribing with you. And, we know this is the state of Vermont, and they take everything very seriously. We were just having fun here. But he wants to throw some cash into the coffee pot for Route 12 coming out of Montpelier connecting Northfield. Oh, my God! Jeremy.
Yeah. Well, as a former Northfield resident, fully aware of that one.
Fully aware.
And I do remember not that long ago when Sue Minter was deputy secretary or even secretary, and Lieutenant Governor Scott at the time. We're talking about it, and that was many years ago, and then obviously last year with the bridge right in Riverton.
Yeah.
So that's certainly a tough stretch of road, and starting to be in the pipeline there.
You should start a Sears wish book. Like a Vermont wish book.
Right.
You distribute it about Christmas time.
Well,
you know?
so
kind of like getting the bid for getting a moose permit.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so we sort of are joking, but I mean that's where the regional planning commissions do come in, because the towns can kind of put together their wish list, and then the regional planning commissions say, "Hey, for Central Vermont, this is what our priorities are," right? And that does weigh in on what projects do get programmed and which ones don't.
Sure.
So it's not so much a lottery, although that'd probably be a good fundraiser, right?
Yes.
But do you? I guess speaking for the public, who is asking, is the state aware of how crappy Route 12 is?
They are, for sure.
They are.
Yeah. So, and I don't know the address off the top of my head, but you can go on to our website and see, what the pavement conditions are for various routes. And, like I said, we look at that every year. It's part of the programming process. Unfortunately, the squeaky wheel doesn't always get the grease.
Right.
And, we are trying to be strategic about that. So.
But let's admit though, Route 12 connecting Northfield to Montpelier, that's a really important artery.
It is, for sure.
But we're also going to complain when it gets dug up and it's being resurfaced.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to go through construction, as we were discussing. It's a necessary evil, right? And to the extent that we can minimize impacts and do the right treatment at the right time, that does reduce the total impacts. So, we certainly beg and plead for a little bit of patience, both during construction and leading up to it.
Of course.
But we are aware of the conditions, and it's, certainly us being in Barrie,
Yes.
no Route 12, but, 114 and Norton's not any,
True.
pleasure either. So there are a lot of needs out there for sure.
We invite folks to post up some comments here, some questions. We've got one already about what's going on over near Hope Cemetery.
Sure. So we're doing intersection reconstruction there, trying to make the alignment a little bit better. Obviously, there's going to be some utilities underground that are impacted. Probably everyone's seen the pipes stacked up there that ECI will be installing. So that's the principal goal there, is to make that intersection a little bit easier. We try to tee in our intersections, so as the driver, you're not like cranking over your shoulder trying to see if there's any cars coming.
You guys don't want to just resurface and then say, we should have improved that intersection, and now it's too. You figure that out beforehand.
Exactly, right? And that goes along with the culverts on 302, right? Before we just pave, we look at, okay, are these culverts going to be needing repair in 4 or 5 years? And if so, we try to get ahead of that. So,
And then in the defense of the state, who is taking a lot of heat on social media right now, the disaster in the cemetery isn't solely the disaster of this project.
Sure.
So the front portion of the lawn does look like hell, and they've tried to keep it really clean and
Sure.
and wet and done.
Sure.
But there is actually a grub infestation in the cemetery, and the city has the cemetery commission has hired somebody to come in and deal with that. So when you see the big rows of grass in between the stones and the aisles in the face of the cemetery, that has nothing to do with the state's project.
Interesting.
So that just is something that people should be aware of, because wow, I mean, I've seen some comments that they're destroying the cemetery, and really this project has not done that. So
See, that's why we have you in here, Jeremy.
Right.
I love this. This is great to have this conversation. We have to.
right. And I mean, I think we do try to be sensitive wherever we're at, right? I mean, whether it be somebody's front yard or cemetery. And you can see, I went through there yesterday, ECI has the orange fence up trying to mark off certain areas. Unfortunately, when I first started this, the contractor said, you've got to deconstruct before you construct. So unavoidable, damage has to occur, right? We've got to some extent, turn it into a bomb zone to do this.
But it looks pretty tidy up there right now.
No, and ECI
Before
said,
the weekend, you guys definitely did as much as they could to make it look decent for the holiday weekend.
And they're a competent contractor, of course, and they're trying to do the best they can. Obviously, it's dusty, so with the lack of rain, putting some dust suppression down, but it's kind of a double-edged sword. You get too much rain, that gets really potholy and things like that. So we try to stay ahead of it, but we do have to try to get forward progress on the projects as well.
You guys should hire me. You should seriously consider having me as part of the engineering team.
Oh, God.
I'd be like, hey, we got a grub problem. Let's get some chickens in here immediately.
Yeah, I'd like to see that bid item.
Yeah.
We'll go from 10 dozen chickens.
Grubs to shit. No problem.
Right.
It's going to look, here's the thing, it's going to look beautiful when it's done, and it needs to be done. That intersection is dangerous, coming off of whatever street there into by Hope Cemetery. We just, this is a good thing that it's being done. What about let's go to Burlington. Winooski last summer. What is it? What is it this summer?
So we're paving downtown. Most of that works at night, just because of the traffic impacts. Trying to limit that. So that was part of one contract where we paved downtown Winooski last year, and we'll be finishing up Burlington this year. We did a little bit of work in Burlington last year up by UVM, but we'll be in the heart of it this year for sure.
Comment here, the road from Marshfield to Groton is horrible as well. If we need to add that to the list. Now, you guys are doing what? Marshfield to Danville.
Yeah, so certainly the Groton Road is something that's been on everybody's radar for a while. We're focusing on Route 2 this year, which wasn't exactly great to begin with either.
No.
So, that's a full depth reclaim. So that's our most intensive pavement treatment.
Full depth reclaim means we're going down
Yeah,
to China.
To gravel. We're going to try to restabilize that sub base and then build it back up with full pavement courses. Obviously, you see the contractor out there pecking away at the ledge, trying to get that. There was a lot of ledge that was awfully close to the white line for a long time there. So, which not only does it make it a dangerous situation, but it makes it tough to maintain as well. So.
Sure. With heaving or whatnot?
Well, just, being able to wing back the snowbanks, get proper drainage,
Sure.
So,
Drainage.
that being our most intensive treatment, we try to do it all. Right?
Yeah.
If there's something that will improve the maintainability of the road for years to come, we'll try to get that out of the way right now, too.
Speaking of drainage, I see, not just the new culverts going in, but also they're digging out
Exactly.
the bank there to
Yep.
let water make its way to the culvert.
Yeah, I mean, a former maintenance guy used to say the three most important things for a roadway are drainage, drainage, and drainage, right? So water obviously causes the heaving when it freezes. So the drier our roadbed depth can be, the better. And so ditching, under drains, culverts all play into that.
I think Shirley wants to get in on some cash bribes here, too, because she's talking about Barry Montpelier Road is horrible from the wayside straight through to Montpelier.
Yep.
All of River Street is just...
Yeah, and so part of that will be addressed this
this.
year. We do, and part of that will be addressed this year. Obviously, we did this side of the wayside, 5-6 years ago,
Yep.
right, headed through, built some bike lanes. So, we're taking chunks at a time, and nobody wants it all done at once. I can assure you that. Right.
I did see it on the list on the page that you told us about.
Yeah, the V transparency. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
River Street?
Yep. So, I'm not entirely sure exactly how far it's going, but yeah, River Street coming out of Montpelier we'll see some treatment this year.
Yeah, wow. What else, Raylene? Anything? Any other ideas? Brookfield to Montpelier?
Yep. So we did southbound last year, northbound 89. Get working on that here in a little while. Get that paved up this year. We're doing down south Route 30,
Yes.
Brattleboro Newfane. That's another full depth reconstruction. Obviously, impacting traffic down there. We finished up 9, or are in the process of finishing up Route 9 down south this year, in Brattleboro to Wilmington. So a lot of work going on. Got some paving up in the Kingdom, Island Pond, Ferdinand, Brighton. So it's a pretty busy summer, pretty well spread out this year.
The Western Corridor, some of the rail projects down there.
Yeah, so we're continuing to try to upgrade those bridges and get ready for Amtrak and get the full load rating for those bridges. Last year and the year before, we put some platforms in. So continuing to invest in that corridor of the rail line for sure.
Do you need some help with Amtrak? You want me to call them?
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, I think they'll have that line up and running here,
And there's some paving going on in Montpelier too, right?
Yep. So downtown Montpelier, we're paving that. People have already probably seen some impacts there. They were out on the Route 2 out by the cemetery a couple weeks ago, and they'll be progressing through Montpelier this season for that.
When you wake up in the morning, is your phone ringing saying, "Hey, we need you down here on Route 30. Hey, we need you up here in the Northeast Kingdom"? An hour later.
So technology's great, right? So I can be in a couple places without actually being there. But yeah, it's a bit of a fire drill from time to time. The beginning of the season and the end of the season are when things are busiest, right? That's when the unknowns sort of come to percolate to the surface. Once we get into July and August, generally speaking, we're in a rhythm. We know what we're doing, and contractors are just building what they're supposed to do. Startups and finish ups are the busy times for sure.
Do you need help right now? Do you need staff?
Absolutely. Right? I mean, we're not like any other employer in the state. We've got openings both in construction. Certainly our maintenance forces have some opportunities. So yeah, by all means, we are perpetually looking for folks. And I think contractors are in the same boat. So certainly, without a doubt, if somebody wants to get into the trades, we've got all kinds of opportunities in Vermont.
Yeah, we were just here with Kingsbury Construction
Yeah.
Sure.
a couple of weeks ago.
Sure.
Who they're hiring like crazy as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't know many contractors who are like, no, we got way too many people as
Yeah.
it is. So that's just
Right.
that's not true. And certainly as a state, whether it be engineers, technicians, maintenance workers, designers, we'll definitely find a spot for you if you're interested.
What about safety?
Yeah, so safety is obviously our first and foremost concern. Definitely take a moment to plug, drop the cell phones, be attentive, follow the speed limits to the extent possible. Try not to be a rubberneck. I know it's interesting, and certainly I can appreciate that, but we definitely need people to be aware and paying attention to when they're working in the work zone, right? I mean, the workers want to come home at night just like everyone else, and when you're on the interstate watching 55-mile-an-hour traffic go by, feet away or inches away, it's not super enjoyable to think somebody's not really giving it their full attention.
Raylene, anything on that?
on the safety stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I do things. I do a couple of things that I've been bitched at a couple of times for doing it, because if there's a flag person, I will stop like at least 2 car lengths away from them, because what if somebody hits me?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I don't need to be a foot from them. I'm going to get through the traffic as soon as they move the sign, just like everybody else.
Sure,
And
sure.
whether I'm 2 car lengths away or right on top of the person.
Sure.
So I always try to do that. I always try to make sure that I am a ways away from them.
Yeah.
I definitely stop before I.
Yeah.
And that really pisses people off. I've had people get out of their car, knock on my window before, and ask me what my problem was. Like, what are you, a fucking moron? No, you are.
Well, and I
Um,
think I think the key takeaway there is have a little bit of patience. Whether it's
Yeah,
right, of
whether it's
course.
stopping a little bit back,
Yeah.
going 25 instead of 40. All of those things in the grand scheme of things
Yeah.
aren't
Yeah.
going to get you to your destination any quicker, really.
No.
But if something goes sideways, the outcome could be pretty catastrophic.
Of course.
Yeah, you could take somebody's family member. It's just terrible.
We all
just
know,
the thought of it.
and
So
the three of us know how quickly and how often that happens. It seems like there's been a couple of pretty major accidents
Recently.
over the last
Yeah,
couple of years.
recently.
For sure. I mean, if there is an injury, I'm one of the first people notified if there's just an accident, and it happens every year. L&D, out there line striping.
Sure.
They've got the big trucks with the attenuators on the back. I think they've been hit twice already this year. So.
And it's not even June.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So definitely keenly aware from the seat
and
I'm
it's
in.
so unnecessary.
Yeah.
There's not there's so much signage, and you there's no way you don't know what's going on.
Sure.
Yeah, and we try to do the best we can, right? And without oversaturating folks, right? We use
Sure.
signs, message boards. Sometimes you'll see the sheriffs out there just with the presence trying to, again, calm traffic a little bit.
Sure.
But, at the end of the day, driver compliance is critical to that equation.
Just this past weekend, I was out in the motorcycle, and let's be honest, it's a great feeling to get out on the bike, and when the weather's perfect, you can slightly exceed the speed limit and get on it a little bit. And when you come around some of those corners, all of a sudden, you got some flagging signs in front of you, and you got to get on it on the brakes, and it's just be
Aware.
aware.
Well, and I think as a motorcyclist, you can recognize how vulnerable you are to other cars, right?
Hell yes.
So, at the end of the day, those workers don't have a 2,000-ton or 2,000-pound vehicle surrounded them. They're
Correct.
out there with a hard hat. So
Yeah. And let's also say this. Give them a damn break. They're standing out there on asphalt that's baking in the sun all summer.
Yep.
They got to wear all this protective clothing. They're sweating. They're tired. Their legs are probably killing them, and they're in the heat. Just give them a break.
I can imagine. I think that's probably one of the most brutal
Oh, yeah.
jobs there are.
And
Yeah.
they're not just standing there. They got to pay attention to what's going on.
And they got to deal with assholes.
Right.
like the rest of us.
Well, and it is consistently rated one of the most dangerous jobs out there, right? And it's hard, right? I mean,
Sure.
at the end of the day, it's a physical. You're exposed to the elements, and the motorists are just one
And they have
piece
to be
of that.
paying attention all the time as
Right.
well.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Lily said to me, I'm not kidding you, this is my 8-year-old daughter, Dad, every time we come to a stop, this was over one of the culvert repairs just down by Dead Man's Corner in April. Dad, every time we come to a stop, that man here has the grouchiest look on his face. And I was like, you're right, he does. But let's stop and think about, maybe why he's not out there for half an hour.
Right.
He's out there for 8 hours or more, and think about how many cars he has to
A full
deal
school
with.
day plus gymnastics. He's
Plus
out there. Yeah.
Yes, that's a lot. That's a lot of time. Yes,
Well, and the other thing I think people need to put in perspective, that guy's not a decision maker in the sense of this project's happening, right? So, I know it's easy to shoot the messenger, but
Sure.
by all means, right, we've got a public outreach line. You can let us know if we're not getting it right, but don't take it out on the workers.
Yeah,
right?
right.
They're not the ones calling the shots.
that's right. What's up with the Mother's Bridge?
Yeah, so that's North Hero, so it's just north or west, depending on how you want to consider it, of the drawbridge, and that goes from Alberg or North Hero to Alberg. And so new deck there.
Okay.
We've got some construction going on now. I think that's down to 1 lane. So that'll be a big project for us this summer for sure, up there in the islands.
Okay. Are there any Grand Canyon type of holes that we need to? The whole road doesn't need to be paved, but
Right.
there's some real. I'm guessing that we have crew that's just going around putting out tiny little fires. Here and
Yeah,
there.
for sure, right? So that's what our maintenance forces do really well, right? They, whether it be, you've probably seen some pothole repair,
Yeah.
they're inspecting some culverts. Obviously, the Richmond emergency culvert project last year, nobody wants to do an emergency
Right.
project, but
Yes.
we are definitely trying to get ahead of that. So far, so good, right? We don't see any of that coming, but it is something we've got to continuously watch, because when you're responding to the fire, it's not as efficient as a planned event for sure.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Be patient. I mean, we all. I'm sure even you.
For sure. Yeah, I was joking with my staff. I've got to camp up in Averill, and I think I've got to drive through 4 or 5 projects just to get there every day this summer. So
Oh,
not
geez.
every day, but every weekend. So, we're all impacted. I don't like it any more than anyone else does, but it is necessary.
And you see firsthand, you know what they're going through.
For sure. I mean, I started in the field right in college, and I've been on those interstate projects, and I've been on some bridge projects where traffic's right there. And
Isn't it amazing? We have this tiny little state, but just last year alone, I think you said the price tag for our roads was $280 million.
Yep. Yeah, that's that. So that gets injected into concrete suppliers, paving, the workers.
Yeah.
Prescott selling pipe. So that's added to our economy. Plus, obviously, the improvement to our roadways. So, I couldn't even begin to quantify the value of our transportation network, because obviously everyone's using it to drive to work. Movement of goods and services is what we do, right? So.
I was April. Raylene remembers well. I was screaming and yelling about the potholes on the air. That's a rite of passage. I mean, we all do that.
Right.
And we were told that the asphalt plants weren't essentially
yet.
open.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some different treatments, right? You can put cold mix down, which is just what it says, right? It's not a hot mix, it's a cold mix. It doesn't last as long, but you can put it down in a little bit more.
Yeah, not long at all.
Right.
Yeah.
But once the plant's open, and that's somewhere let's say April 15th, May 1st, they'll start gearing up. And our traditional season for paving is May 1 for some of the bottom courses, and then the top wearing course is going to be May 15th. And then we'll be going right through into October and hopefully shutting down by November.
How is asphalt made? Is the old roadway ground up?
Yep.
Mix some tar in there and keep it churning.
Yeah, so what you're referring to is what's called recycled asphalt pavement, RAP. So there's some of that goes in there. And then you've got what we'll call virgin asphalt, which is, a petroleum product. And then you've got sand and stone, virgin sand and stone, that goes in there. It all gets heated up, made into a composite mixture, depending on the type, and then placed back down.
And where do we make this? Right up here in Granger?
Yeah,
Road?
so there's a number of places. Like Pike's got a plant there. Everyone's probably familiar with the big Whitcomb plant in Colchester, right next to the quarry. Hutchins has a plant in Irisburg. There's a big plant down in West Leb. So it's all throughout the state. We've got asphalt plants, concrete plants that give us some of those products.
And that's a science too. My dad did
absolutely.
that back in the day. There's all kinds of like test pavements, and then there's all kinds of stuff involved.
Yeah.
Which he used to sit up there in this little lab thing, and it was crazy.
Yeah,
that
for
he would
sure.
go through all of
We've
that.
got guys both on the contractor side and on the VTrans side that literally have a PhD in it. So, it is a very, very complex equation to get it stiff enough so that you don't get the rutting, but flexible enough so that when you do get a little frost heaves and whatnot, that it doesn't just break and crumble apart. So, it is a science all of itself.
If you guys just happen to be passing my house and you have any left over in the tray, just dump it. Right, I'll spread it out. It's fine. Raylene has the road construction report with the Agency of Transportation that is posted up. You posted that up a couple of hours ago. It's up there right now. It changes every week. Mm-hmm. So some projects, we're all moving parts here. Some are taking longer than we thought, some unanticipated delays, and some are moving on pace, and some, frankly, may be above pace.
For sure. I mean, we set a target completion date, and, there's a lot that goes into that, too, with the construction sequence and whatnot. But trying to get the most value out of the dollars we spend, we try to give the contractors a little bit of flexibility to control those construction sequences and the means and methods and their overall work, right? Contractors don't just build one job, right? They've got a portfolio that they're doing every year. So we try to give folks as much flexibility to make the projects as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
And it's a dance, shall we say, to both not impact other projects, allow the contractors to best use their staffs and resources, but get what we need done at the end of the day, right? And obviously, weather's a part of that, subsurface conditions, and it's construction, right? There are oops.
Yeah,
right? We try to avoid it, but it happens. So
when do we think the projected finish might be for Hope Cemetery? And I should get on the website and look and get that information.
Yeah, so I don't know off the top of my head. I would imagine sometime this fall, but yeah, certainly go to VTransparency. It'll give you the full fact sheet.
Yeah.
There might be, wouldn't be surprised if there's some cleanup work next spring just to get the grass growing and things like that. But I believe that has a fall completion date.
I think so too. I think when I looked, it was September or something.
Yeah.
Right. What's a typical day like for you, Jeremy?
That's the best part of my job is there isn't really a typical day, right? So you mentioned fire drills. There's certainly a portion of that. Trying to weed through some, engineering type fixes, shall we call it, if something doesn't go well, trying to find efficient remedies. Certainly, $280 million changes hands. So there's going to be some disagreements, right? And that's unavoidable to the best of our ability. So that's a large part of my deal is trying to figure out who's responsible for what, who owes who what.
Yeah.
And then just managing our staff. So the construction section has basically 70 folks in it. Providing oversight and managing all these projects. Plus, we hire another 100 consultants, and so we've got to manage that as well. So
when the governor calls you guys, who does he call?
So ideally, he calls Secretary Joe Flynn or the chief engineer Ann Gamble, but oftentimes those do trickle down to my desk. But there is a chain of command that does get to Governor Scott for sure.
Does he essentially leave you guys alone?
Yeah, I mean, most governors have been great, right, over my career.
But he's privy to budgeting and what you guys got going
absolutely,
on.
Right? So, and as the fall kind of progresses, our budget gets presented, and like any other budget, the governor does his budget address, and the transportation fund is part of that. Right? You've got three major funds. You've got the general fund, education fund, and then transportation fund. And so we work on priorities, whether that be a little bit more paving, less bridges, more maintenance, whatever. We would try to come up with that. And the governor's very supportive of transportation, obviously. So at the end of the day, we present that, work with the legislature to get it fully funded.
Anything, Raylene, you want to jump in with?
I'm good.
I shot you a text, I think last week or something, saying, "Hey, is VTrans involved with?" And I asked you this because I was also asked, actually, by a neighbor of mine, if VTrans is involved with any of the invasive Japanese bamboo that's grown alongside the roadways, which I know you guys have had to contend with.
For sure, right? So A&R
get lost in it.
Yeah, you can. I've definitely been there, but so we have to follow the best practices when we encounter any invasive species, and certainly Japanese knotweed's probably the most visible to everybody.
Yes.
Virtually any roadway you can see it along the streams and rivers that are parallel. They are the experts of the Agency of Natural Resources, and they come up with the best management practices not to spread these things.
Sure.
Poison parsnip, Japanese knotweed, emerald ash borer, right? The state has, a number of invasive species, and we'll follow those best management practices, in our projects for sure.
Do you ever have to deal with sensitive areas? For example, heading up 302 by the Eastbury Dam. Do you ever have to field calls from the Save the Beaver Foundation.org?
Yeah, I mean, everybody is, a stakeholder, right? If you pay taxes, you're a stakeholder. So we try to, take all those competing interests, work with the regulators, whether it be, the Coast Guard,
sure,
Agency of Natural Resources, and try to find the right thing to do, but not necessarily cost prohibitive in what we do.
He's so professional with his answers. I'm serious.
But I mean, so that's the deal, right? So
if I was on your staff, I'd be taking a pop shot at one of the beavers. I'd bring my 22 to work.
But like there's two bat species that are threatened and endangered, right? The Indiana bat and the northern long-eared bat. So we get out there before they roost and cut trees because we don't want to mess up their roosting sites. So
that's amazing.
That's just part of what we do as far as being stewards of both the environment and we mentioned archaeological sensitive areas, things like that.
The salamanders and the frogs up in where is it? Moncton? But no.
Colchester on Route 2.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So and that's part of also what we do in their design, right?
Sure.
So there's something called aquatic organism passage.
Yes.
So if you have a culvert, it's got to be big enough so that these critters feel comfortable. So a culvert isn't just like what can get the water through; it's what can get the animals that depend on that water course to get through. So.
And you guys have built some pretty incredible things.
Yeah, so we do a lot with culverts, right? We put retention sills in, which will hold the stream bed, right? So it's not just this concrete bottom, and that provides an ability for fish to move throughout the culvert. Obviously, AOP passage. We do a lot relative to trying to maintain some balance and sustainability of our projects. You mentioned RAP earlier. That's part of our recycled working group, right? How can we limit our general overall footprint, whether it be carbon or any other resource? And we spend a fair amount of time looking at that sort of stuff.
I bet. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. It's going to be a busy summer. It's going to be a hot summer, believe it or not. And it's going to be a hot week. You guys are going to be out jamming
For sure.
until the snow flies and beyond.
Yes, I mean, hopefully not too far beyond, but
Yeah.
just because a lot of what we do is temperature sensitive. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean, we've got to make hay while the sun shines, and we've had a good stretch of weather, and looks like that's pretty good moving forward. So we can't squander days, so we'll be out there.
The projects that we've mentioned are the big ones statewide, right?
Yeah, and we're gonna do ballpark 95 projects this year, right? Those will be new
Wow.
contracts that we're putting out. So I am in no way mentioning them all. Just trying to sort of say, okay, here we are in Central Vermont, but also statewide. Here's what we got.
And I can put that link up too, so that people can see what the projection is.
Yeah, I mean, another one on the southern end of our listener would be Royalton, right on Route 14, the one-way railroad bridge.
Yep.
Right. So we're working on that. So next year we'll hopefully have two-way bridge through there. So
Oh, wow.
Wow.
there's a lot of work. 280 million, 95 projects, but.
And you think we're going to be right just under 300 million for this?
Yeah, it'll be 280 something, I would guess, if I had to handicap it. I mean, the way things are funded is I don't get $280 million to spend this year. All of our projects are funded. So one project may be a little bit more expensive, another one will be a little bit cheaper, but that project is funded. And so to tell you what we're going to spend sort of depends how it plays out. And but ballpark will be 280 something, I would guess.
And of course, you have, I'm guessing, some unanticipated projects that you have absolutely no idea right now that you may not realize until.
Exactly. It can happen, right? We try to limit that, but there'll be potentially unanticipated projects where we've got to respond to a unforeseen repair or whatever. And then, as we mentioned earlier, sometimes projects, we find stuff that we weren't anticipating, right? Whether it be
In the project
yeah,
itself.
right. PCBs up in Grand Isle North Hero was a big example. Sometimes the bridge just isn't as good as we thought, right? And so once we start banging away and start trying to do a repair, we find out that we've got to do more repairs than we thought. And so,
Or there could be a discussion of do we repair this bridge or do we remove it?
yep, and
Start over.
exactly, and that happens as well.
It's like an old car you're trying to fix up.
Right, I mean, that is sort of the old Vermont joke, right? Don't knock off the rust; it's holding it together. Well, we can look at it and we can do as much investigation as we want, but there is that 2 to 3 year development cycle. And so what we thought it was when we started the design, and we took some rough guesses as far as how much concrete repair will be needed, how much steel repairs will be needed. We don't really know that until we get in there sandblasting and doing some of the demo to see how far the extents go.
Sure. It's like working on an old house. Once you run that saw,
Right.
and you cut into that wall,
Yeah.
you have no idea what you're looking at.
Yeah, well, and fortunately we don't have termites here, but everybody's seen a rotten sill before, right?
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
it's sort of covered up with the clapboards until you start peeling back the onion. You don't know how bad you're going to cry. So
That's right. We all have to just remember to try and be patient this summer. Not only be patient, but be cautious. Slow the hell down. Stay off the cell phone.
for sure.
And give them a break, which means give all workers plenty of berth when you're moving around and through those construction sites.
Absolutely. That's the takeaway for today, if there was one.
Yeah, yeah, big time. We love having you in here, Raylene. Is there anything else you can think of for Jeremy?
I think we're good.
I really enjoy having you in here, and your time
appreciate it very much.
Your time is so valuable to us. The message that we get on the air is imperative. I think it's great.
No, and like I said, we love it, love the opportunity, right? We've got to keep our customers aware of what we're doing, right? Because if somebody can avoid a construction site, give them that opportunity. So communicating with you and the weekly updates is absolutely part of our mission. So
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you again so
thank you,
much.
JD.
Raylene and I are going to be covering the parade at about 10:30. It's going to be passing
Yes.
right through Barrie.
Yes, right through Barry, 10:30. And then if you want, you can head over to Gusto's because at 11:30 they start doing Taco Tuesday. Just
I
saying.
forgot about that. I don't
It's
know what
not
day.
Monday. It's
I don't
Tuesday.
know what day it is.
And today is Taco Tuesday at Gusto's.
Oh my God.
Your favorite day.
Yes, it is. Also, is the American Legion doing their meal tonight? I think they are, right?
Yes, they are. I'll get that up there.
All right.
Yeah. All kinds of stuff going on.
We should also mention that after the parade comes through town, they're going to have a ceremony at the Barry City Hall Park.
Yes, they are. And then after the parade goes through town, we may be doing something special this afternoon or early afternoon, late afternoon with Fecto Homes.
All right.
So we haven't shored all of that up yet because of some other,
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff
balls
going
in the
on.
game. Yeah, there's a lot going on today. So we're going to try to do what we can to get up there to Beckley Hill Meadows. But if we don't do it today, keep watch because we will be doing it soon. We'll be doing some walkthroughs up there.
All right. Also, grab your kayak raffle ticket over at R&L Archery or
Yes.
at the Central Vermont Chamber of Commerce or at just centralvt.com.
Mm-hmm.
They're giving
Tomorrow's
us,
it, right? Tomorrow's last day.
I think, yeah.
Drawing on the 1st.
Yeah, tomorrow's the last day to get your ticket. They're $20 for this beautiful kayak. This $1,100 kayak over at R&L Archery, and they're giving it away on Thursday. Also, the big sale on these is coming up.
Yes, and if you mention the show
You get an extra.
from Friday,
Yeah,
where Will was here with us, you get 35% off those glasses.
these are the Costa RX.
Yes.
Right here, the world's clearest polarized prescription sunglasses. Mention anything to do with Aired Out, and you're going to get 35% off. That's like today and
Tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last day.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's so cool. We love optical expressions.
We do.
So, anything else that we can think of? I think that's pretty much it, Rayleigh, right?
I think that's it for
right.
now.
Jeremy, thank you again. And be well. Take
Awesome.
good care. Have a safe summer, and we'll catch you again real soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Judy.